Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you've shared and turn them into the knowledge you actually need. We are jumping straight into a question that is, frankly, it's just everywhere in the digital marketing world right now. It starts out sounding really tactical, but it's really strategic. The core question in our source material today is basically this. Can you rank a site built in, say, HighLevel, or does it have to be rebuilt in WordPress?
And it sounds like a pure tech question, right? Like we should be getting into server response times and schema.
Exactly, the technical architecture.
But what we found is that this whole platform debate, HighLevel versus WordPress, Duda, whatever, it's almost always a proxy. It's a stand-in for a much deeper and much more human concern.
That's it, exactly. The business owner, the person who's actually asking this question, they're not really worried about the content management system's code.
No.
They're worried about risk. They're looking for reassurance. What they're really asking is, can you actually succeed in my environment, in my competitive space?
Is this investment I'm about to make going to pay off? Yeah.
Yeah. They just need to know that the tools they're using aren't some kind of strategic trap.
And that pivot, that change in perspective, that really defines our deep dive today. We're going to move completely beyond the technical checklists and the platform debates.
Because the real problem isn't the tooling.
Rarely. The true limiting factor, the strategic trap we mentioned, is the actual structural design of the industry itself.
Okay, so let's unpack this core idea then. Our goal today is to figure out not just how to do SEO, but where SEO is actually a strategically sound and, financially viable choice.
That is the critical distinction. We're drawing this central thesis from the sources. SEO is not just a technical discipline. It's not just about content. It is fundamentally an economic one.
An economic one?
Yes. Its success isn't determined by how well you execute, not by that alone, but by the industry competition, the incentives, and the constraints that exist long before you even write your first meta description.
So, if I'm getting this right, the question shifts. It's no longer, can my site rank for something?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes, is investing in organic search economically viable enough to justify what is, let's be honest, a really sustained and significant capital investment?
Precisely. And that pivot is what separates a winning strategy from just a perpetually expensive effort. You have to stop treating SEO like it's some kind of universal recipe.
Which brings us right into our first big idea.
Yeah.
This myth of industry agnosticism.
Oh, it's so persistent.
It is. It's this deeply held belief that SEO is a formula. We all agree on the fundamentals, good technicals, great content, building links. The assumption is if two businesses in totally different industries follow these same best practices, they should get, roughly similar results.
But the structural reality just doesn't work that way. It breaks down, and it breaks down fast.
Yeah.
You can have two businesses, both following all the best practices, both hiring really skilled teams, and their results can be just wildly different.
And it's not the team's fault.
Not at all. The reason isn't skill. It's that the rules of the game are completely different in their respective markets.
Okay, hold on. I need to push back on that a little bit. Because we're constantly hearing about Google's universal rules, right? EAT, site speed, user experience. If those things apply everywhere, why can't a good practitioner just execute harder to overcome these structural problems?
Because execution only matters up to the point where you hit a structural ceiling. And if that ceiling is really low, all that extra effort just becomes wasted motion. The sources we looked at identified 4 main factors that determine if SEO is economically viable. And none of them are about site speed.
Okay, let's go through that framework, because this feels like the filter you need to apply before you spend even a single dollar.
Right. So first is asset control. Does the business actually own and control its core digital assets? We're talking website structure, internal links, schema, all of it.
Okay, number 1 is control.
Second, differentiation. Can the business create a unique position? Can they create proprietary content, or are they kind of stuck with generic templated copy?
All right. Third, competitive density. I mean, how many scaled, well-funded competitors are going after the exact same audience and keywords? And then finally, number 4, budget alignment.
Budget alignment.
Does the business's financial structure, its actual cash flow, allow for the sustained, high-level investment that SEO demands over the long haul?
Wow. That reframes everything, doesn't it? You could have incredible site speed, perfect technical SEO, but if you have low asset control and off-the-charts competitive density...
the viability is basically zero.
Yeah. It moves the conversation from, can I do this, to should I even be doing this?
Yes, and understanding the lack of those 4 factors takes us right into our next segment, where we profile these structurally hostile environments, what the sources are calling the captive industry trap.
And these are the industries where organic search is just an uphill and often an economically irrational battle.
That's the one. We're talking about verticals like real estate, insurance, and a lot of the fragmented financial services. Okay, so let's drill into the constraints that make these markets so tough. Constraint number 1 you mentioned was the control deficit.
This is a huge, huge issue for independent professionals. Think about your local agents, advisors, brokers. They're often operating under a bigger corporate brand, a brokerage, a carrier, a franchise.
And that relationship strips them of control.
It strips them of control over their main digital presence. They might get a nice little vanity website, but they lack the fundamental levers you need to do effective SEO.
Can you give me a really concrete example? What does that lack of control actually look like day to day?
Absolutely. So in many of these captive setups, the agent literally can't modify core on-page elements. They can't edit their H1 or H2 tags outside of, a preset field. They can't customize the page title structure.
So no real on-page optimization.
And they definitely can't manage the internal linking structure to build out topical clusters. They're locked into a very controlled, standardized template. It's designed for brand uniformity, not for building topical authority.
So they're trying to rank a business using a web page they don't even truly own.
Exactly. Which creates the second constraint, the thin content mandate. We usually think of thin content as just lazy writing, but here it's structural.
It's mandatory.
It is.
Oh.
In these highly regulated industries, you have compliance rules, brand guidelines, and they dominate everything. The content is designed, first and foremost, to mitigate legal risk.
Not to establish expertise or authority.
No, it has to be safe. Generic, approved boilerplate copy.
So the result is you get hundreds, maybe thousands of agent profiles or little microsites in a single city that they might look a little different, but they all say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I help people buy and sell homes.
I offer great coverage, and that's the absolute death knell for organic visibility.
Okay.
Search engines reward unique usefulness, right?
Yeah.
Specificity. So if the algorithm sees thousands of pages that are fundamentally interchangeable because they're all forced to use the same generic language, it has very little signal to tell the good from the great. It has no rational reason to favor one over the other.
So, okay, we've got constrained control, we have mandated generic content, and that inevitably leads to the third constraint, which is the unforgiving competitive math.
The density is just brutal. I mean, think of a major city. You have thousands of real estate agents, insurance brokers, financial advisors, all targeting the exact same tiny handful of valuable keywords.
Insurance agent in Chicago.
Local realtor. And this density, it doesn't just make it hard. It dramatically increases the cost of just participating, while the actual incremental gains you get become smaller and smaller. It's like you're trying to climb a wall that 5,000 other people are also trying to climb, and you all have the same generic tools.
So SEO just becomes this really expensive exercise in pushing against a structural barrier. It's not a growth engine.
Not in that environment.
Okay, and this problem gets even worse, especially for local businesses, when we look at the Google Maps zero-sum game.
This might be the most insidious constraint of all because it's not an algorithm preference, it's a physical, fixed limitation. For almost all local searches, what does Google show?
The map pack. The top 3 results.
3 spots. That's the entire visible landscape for many of these searches.
And I imagine it gets even tighter.
Oh, it gets much tighter because of proximity filtering. Imagine a big real estate brokerage downtown or a large office park with multiple insurance agencies. You have dozens of independent agents all operating out of the exact same physical address.
Right, so if 50 agents all list the same address in their Google business profile, Google's not going to show all 50 in the map pack. That would be a terrible user experience.
Precisely. Google applies proximity filtering, and it deduplicates the results. So even if 20 of those profiles are perfectly optimized, great reviews, filled out descriptions, everything, Google will often only show 1, maybe 2 from that specific building.
To give the user some geographic diversity.
Exactly. The rest are just filtered out, not because their SEO is bad, but because they share a mailbox.
That is a powerful point for anyone listening. This isn't a penalty. It's not about quality. It's physics. You can't put 10 players on a 3-person field.
No amount of optimization, no schema, nothing can overcome the fact that the visibility simply does not exist for most of those clustered competitors. It's a zero-sum game.
With a ceiling you can't break through.
And that brings us to the financial problem that so often kills these campaigns. the budget mismatch.
Okay, tell me more about this mismatch. What does SEO need, and what can the typical professional in these markets actually give it?
SEO requires sustained, long-term, high investment. In these super competitive niches, you need deep, consistent resources to go up against the big players, the national lead gen companies, the big franchises with dedicated marketing teams.
You have to commit for the long haul.
You have to commit to continuous content, link building, authority building for 18 to 24 months minimum just to see real traction.
But the financial reality for an independent agent or a broker,
Mm-hmm.
their income is commission-based. It's cyclical, it's unpredictable.
Totally. So when the market slows down or they just hit a dry spell, what's the first thing to get cut? Always. And that stop and start behavior is just fundamentally at odds with how SEO works. Organic search rewards consistency. It rewards compounding momentum over time.
So when you cut the budget for 6 months and then try to jump back in,
It doesn't just pause the campaign, it often completely resets the momentum you fought so hard for. And it lets those scaled competitors just pull further and further ahead, completely unchallenged.
so the lack of stable financial alignment means the investment just can't be sustained, no matter how good the strategy is on paper. You're always stopping before the real returns kick in.
It's a systemic weakness.
Ah.
And that's why our sources really stress the multi-channel imperative for these specific industries. When organic visibility is this constrained, SEO alone is rarely a viable lead gen engine.
The lesson there is that successful operators, they don't try to force SEO to carry the entire weight of their business.
Right. They use a blend. They rely heavily on paid search Google's local service ads, high-intent paid clicks, and they really prioritize their referral networks. In these tough environments, SEO often plays a crucial but supporting role. For what? Capturing long-tail searches, maybe?
Exactly. Capturing informational intent, validating your credibility when someone's been referred to you, but treating it as the primary growth engine in a captive industry is it's a recipe for burning through your resources.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty clear picture of where and why SEO struggles. Let's pivot. Let's talk about the solution. Where does SEO actually thrive? Where can we find real leverage?
This is where we shift from that captive industry profile to what we're calling the independent industries profile. These are the verticals where all the structural characteristics line up and they allow SEO efforts to compound, exponentially.
It's where you can create massive competitive leverage.
Yes. The difference is that alignment between control, differentiation, and budget.
So what are the key attributes we should be looking for in one of these friendly environments?
The first one is full asset and narrative control. The client owns and can modify absolutely everything: the root code, the site structure, the schema, the internal linking. They can intentionally build a deep proprietary well of topical authority. So their effort actually stacks up. It doesn't hit that artificial ceiling.
Exactly. And because they have that control, they can achieve the second attribute, which is clear differentiation potential.
And this is where SEO really shines.
This is where it shines. The industry has to reward specialization. When a business can move beyond generic service descriptions and create deep, really niche content that signals unique expertise, that is SEO gold. You're no longer competing with thousands of generalists.
Can you give us an example of what that kind of niche positioning looks like?
Sure. Think about a B2B service provider with a very specific offer, like a company that only does ERP system migrations for mid-sized manufacturers, or a specialized contractor like a roofer who only works on historic homes with slate roofs.
Or a law firm that only does trademark registration for biotech startups.
Perfect example. They can create content nobody else can. They immediately signal deep expertise, and Google rewards that.
And the third piece of this puzzle is that strategic budget alignment, which makes sure the momentum doesn't stall.
Correct. In these businesses, the client sees SEO not as a marketing expense, but as long-term asset building. They commit consistent, predictable investment. It's like infrastructure. And in those environments, the same level of effort that would barely make a dent in a captive industry produces profound, compounding, and defensible momentum.
So the common thread is leverage. When you have control, differentiation, and budget alignment, SEO stops being this fragile, unpredictable thing, and it becomes predictable, measurable, and more efficient over time.
That is the strategic takeaway. The decision to invest heavily in SEO has to be a high-level one. It's a channel strategy decision, and it's based on recognizing where you actually have leverage.
Which brings us right back to that original question, doesn't it? WordPress or HighLevel? That whole technical debate is just a strategic distraction.
It really is.
For a serious SEO practitioner, the real skill isn't knowing how to run a checklist. It's recognizing where the conditions for success just aren't there.
And choosing where not to operate, opting out of those captive industries is often the soundest financial choice you can make for a client. Saying no protects them from overinvesting their limited resources in a channel that has a capped upside.
And that leads us to the final provocative thought we want to leave you with today. If your industry is structurally hostile, if you lack control, if differentiation is impossible, and the competitive math is just brutally expensive,
should you keep fighting that expensive uphill battle for tiny marginal gains?
or is strategically abandoning the channel the soundest financial choice you can make? Freeing up those resources for paid ads or referral networks where you know your effort will be rewarded.
It's not about the platform, it's about the playing field.
Food for thought. That's our strategic view on why SEO sometimes feels like it just stops working. Until next time, keep digging deeper.